why is this? Like, I just saw the tweet. I'm just like, why? What? Why is so many casters just piling in on this as an opportunity to? Everyone just wanted to be part of a conversation. You know what I mean? Everyone just wanted to get in there.
I'm just like, everybody wants to be justified.
Yeah, God, just let it go. Like the guy's complaining about something he didn't like. It's such a non-issue, but everyone's in there like, no, I've got to make my voice heard on this topic. So I am in there just being contrarian. there was what I like. It's like one-line answers, and like, no offense to most of you, I have more experience in casting than any of the other commentators that post in that fucking thread, and I'm just memeing. How do we broach this topic, gentlemen? So yet another week goes by, and yet another notable individual / pro complaining about quality of commentary. So this is happening a little bit now, and it's great to get the feedback, I guess. Oh, can we just yeah, I mean, the very top of it, I guess I didn't really get to read that that out as much as I would have liked. Some of you have probably seen it. let me try and do this justice.
It's so cringe when the only analysis a commentator can bring to the cast is talking about a player's performance.
Okay, fair. All right. So
Jesus.
So in fairness, this is like Shinobi saying, I'm pretty referring to what people were talking about, Thief, right? Where you know, it was Avril and I hold shift for casting, and I think the belief is that like they were maybe lingering on the topic of the lack of kills in that situation. I think it also happened to Arsenar at one point where he was struggling a little bit and people were pointing it out. So okay, you know, Lex gets involved, and I wanted to highlight this because, you know, this is where some of the nuance comes out. So Lex is like, you know, he competed before. Lex is he's a real gamer. He is a quote unquote gamer, right? The guy's playing Quake and CS at a pretty high level. He said, you know, Shinobi responds, it's certainly acceptable to point out players who are doing well and those who are struggling. Players aren't immune to criticism. It just becomes boring when that's all that is talked about in the broadcast. This last sentence is a bit important. Maybe I'm biased as a competitor, though, and not from the average point of view. So first of all, it's not like, sorry, can you guys answer this for me? It wasn't the only thing that Avril was referring to on the broadcast, right? Like when I watched this, I didn't necessarily feel like this was the only thing that he was talking about. I listened very closely to Avril, particularly because I try and give him feedback. And in my humble opinion, it definitely felt like he was talking about a lot more than just this, but he would refer to it after consecutive rounds in which Thief was unable to get a kill. What are your thoughts on this one? I've got two commentators here, so let's talk about it.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, considering how much experience Avril has being a color caster as well, I think if you didn't even watch the game and you knew that it was Avril casting, you probably go, yeah, he's not just going to hap on the same topic. I do think that if Thief underperforms, it is the core narrative when it comes to that team. If I, as a color caster, talking about all of these other like smaller nuanced stuff, and I'm failing to mention that one of the best duelists, not in North America, but the world, isn't performing very well and he's kind of being overrun a little bit, I should be talking about that. I should be highlighting that as much as I can. Yeah, I think Shinobi has a point if you're talking about it too much, but I feel that this is one of those things where maybe multiple people have done it across different games, certainly with duelists in North America. But it is that typical, oh, I wasn't referring to just one person, I'm referring to like half a dozen. But clearly he just probably heard it once, and because that was his experience listening to other casters that might have done similar things, he can't go to the caster themselves to give feedback. Of course, he has to put it online, and I don't have time for people that side tweet and subtweet.
Fair enough. I want to make this very clear though. Pro players do not owe you the time of day. Like you are not entitled to have a pro player go to the extent of finding who you are and messaging you to give you feedback. Sure. You're not entitled to that at all. So the thing, like everyone says, like, you know, it'd be really better if like you maybe approach, you know, yeah, that's true. That is true. But by the same token, if I put myself in Shinobi's shoes, I'm not fucking looking up who the commentator is that I probably don't know who they are. You know, just because, and that's just not because they're random. It's because I maybe just I focus more on the game and less on the talking. Maybe pros just don't get the same value out of commentary as regular viewers do. That's also fine. There's definitely there's a gulf in expertise between the two. Correct. So people are like, you know, there's a better way of going about this. I would agree that, you know, if you were really interested in improving the quality of the commentary, you would go the extra mile to reach out to that individual and give them the feedback. But I can also see how the effort required can be a little bit prohibitive. And maybe you just feel like complaining about it in general. So Bala gets involved here with what I would consider to be pretty straightforward thoughts. Shinobi already, so I mean, okay, so talking about framing, I mean, man, the guy had to cast Fortnite, so I mean, he knows how to frame things in a positive way.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, can you put me back on the one box again? This whole thread just looked like commentators trying to talk about how much they knew about casting. Like, honestly, like, I'm seeing a bunch of responses from multiple guys, and it's just like people just like rattling off what they think about casting. I'm like, okay, like, I don't really quite understand. This is not an opportunity for you casters to show off how much you fucking know. You know what I mean? Like, there's a discussion to be had here, but like, I didn't really understand why every man and his dog felt like they needed to talk up and share their philosophy on casting. Like, that's not what Shinobi is trying to do. Maybe, this is okay, it's a personal opinion. There's another tweet about this I wanted to highlight, which kind of triggered me a little bit. But I mean, I don't blame the guy for saying it, but it's just like, okay, so everyone's talking about it. It's almost like casters were justifying the way that they casted. All right, so Elevated comes from Dota, from what I understand, has a decent background there. And I think he produces some content. So, I'm going to plug the guy because I think he produces analytical content on Valorant. I've seen it on Reddit before. Mm-hmm. The casting in Valorant is very awkward right now because there are a lot of styles from other games trying to apply to Valorant. I think it's too fast-paced to have a CSGO conversational analysis like Lorna's, but it's too slow to hype cast like Overwatch all the time. You can see my response there. It's not awkward right now, mate. I get on the mic, me and Van Silly, we fucking dominate. I get on the mic, or with someone like Nothing, and we nail it. I'm not trying to cast this like Overwatch. Are you kidding me? I've got 10 years of experience in commentary, and you think I'm just going to cut and paste the same fucking approach as another game that I did before? Like, no. And no decent commentator is going to do that from CS or wherever. No one comes into casting Valorant with such hubris to think that they can just apply the same heuristic from a different game. So, like, why is this? Like, I just saw the tweet. I'm just like, why? Why is so many casters just piling in on this as an opportunity to? Everyone just wanted to be part of a conversation. You know what I mean? Everyone just wanted to get in there.
Everybody wants to be justified.
Yeah, God, just let it go. Like the guy's complaining about something he didn't like. It's such a non-issue, but everyone's in there like, no, I've got to make my voice heard on this topic. So I am in there just being contrarian. there was what I like. It's like one-line answers, and like, no offense to most of you, I have more experience in casting than any of the other commentators that post in that fucking thread, and I'm just memeing. Right? That should tell you something about just how important this is as a topic, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
sorry, go on.
I just want to take a quick second and add on to that comment too from Elevator. Like, I respect the guy, but at the same time, by reading that comment, I was slightly, I felt very insulted at the same time, because I do work a lot and I watch a lot of VODs about this game to be as knowledgeable as I can. And to have somebody saying that the cast is a little bit awkward in Valorant right now is kind of not the right way to approach
winner
it
of Community Caster Challenge telling us that our casting is awkward. Excuse me.
Yeah. So like, fuck. I mean, there's a lot that's put into casting in terms of like knowing when to speak, how to speak, when to bring the tempo, when to bring the rate. It's not or the tone, the tonality of your voice. So it's there's a lot that comes into like building our craft, and to get it shit on like that by a comment like that was quite infuriating.
I don't think he meant it that way, to be fair. Like I think he generally wanted to contribute to the conversation. It's just the way it came off, and I was sat there like, with all due respect, like, I walk in here from Overwatch and I don't just coast on my fucking reputation. I get involved in VCT games. I'm out there on the fucking B stream with Van Silly, and we're just fucking nailing it. Like, there's definitely ways that we can improve, but like, we put everything into making sure that even a match on the B stream is done justice. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to fucking hear people being like, oh yeah, well, I feel like the casting needs just a lot of work in the scene. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Let's try and keep the wheels turning just a little bit here, because Richard Lewis got involved in this, as maybe we would have expected him to. He sort of responds to this thread. So I want to stay on this for just a second, because obviously Richard he's not deeply involved in this. What Richard does, I think, is that he sees another Valorant player complaining about casting, which really reinforces the kind of stuff he's already talked about in the past, right? So it was Android, or it was Soulcast, Android, and now Shinobi, right? So Richard basically like, Valorant players being soft again. And Shinobi's like, actually, look, there's some nuance here. Richard's like, I don't really need to see any more about this. Like, I know all I need to watch that player complaining about casting and you know what I mean. Shinobi's like, well, okay, look, I make it pretty clear that it's acceptable to point out and criticize players for poor performance. It's not so much that Rich is twisting Shinobi's words, is that he doesn't need a deep dive into what's going on for it to sort of continue to build into his narrative that, you know, which may or may not be wrong, that, you know, this whole Valorant play is a soft kind of thing, right? In fairness, he starts his video. Okay, so he brings out a video that says Valorant players are still soft, but he opens it with like, all right, I hope you're watching this, Rivington, because Rivington last time said that Richard was generalizing about whether, you know, Valorant players were soft. And Richard's like, listen, man, in the journalistic industry, you need 3 examples of something happening for it to be not a generalization anymore. And lo and behold,
trend,
3 examples of Valorant players complaining about casters, it becomes a trend. So in a sense, he feels justified in saying these guys are kind of soft.
Yeah.
So I mean, see again, Richard, he doesn't sort of watch this. He didn't watch the cast, right? Obviously, he does a bunch of other stuff, right? So Shinobi, you know, continues to try and I feel for him because he's trying to have maybe a little bit of a conversation about the nuance here, but Richard is not interested in having it. So I'd say there's a little bit of bad faith here from Richard, or just a lack of interest in actually engaging with the specifics of this issue. But that is how it is. He can skim read some of these factors here. He's not entrenched in Valorant, you know what I mean? I think that he dives in and dives out when it's something that he wants to highlight on his own content. So fair enough. I feel bad for Shinobi a little bit there because I think he was really trying to, you know, add some context a little bit.
I was gonna say, in hindsight, when you're reading through from his first tweet to the replies and everything that he's discussing about with everybody in that thread, it wasn't necessarily to bash any caster specifically. It was just like, hey, this is how I feel right now, but I guess it just came out the wrong way. Probably the same way how I probably misread the elevated tweet. And now it's just to have a better understanding from both ends to like agree upon what is, I guess, the best type of entertainment you can get for Valorant. I don't know. Listen to more Uber.
I do feel that there is a bit of a trend with this, though, that annoys me the most. This seems to happen to the casters that maybe weren't established in other games, right? Maybe like there is the correlation that because they're maybe new to games that they make those kind of mistakes. They keep saying the wrong things, for example. But I do feel like you could have. I think there is sort of a bias against some casters that weren't established in other games to kind of go in at them more. And I think that's kind of one of the more frustrating things where you could probably have 2 color casters, one of which did Counter-Strike before, one of which didn't, say the exact same things, and you would have people complimenting the Counter-Strike caster for being so knowledgeable and knowing what they're talking about, and then shit-talking the other person because they don't. There isn't enough there is no established Valorant casting right now. If they didn't come from other games, you could look at people like Pansy, but Pansy's years of experience doing tactical shooters. Same with DDK and Sean Garris. They don't make the mistakes that somebody like I would make or Tanner would make, for example, or in this case, you know, even Avril, and Avril's been doing this a long ass time. I just feel like it's a lot of the Counter-Strike players that look at this, don't recognize the name and go, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, which I'm getting kind of bored of seeing because pro players are trying to learn the game, casters are trying to keep up as well. It's a learning experience for everybody. So don't just dogpile onto somebody if they make a mistake, right?
Okay, so it's your belief that it's actually not the fact that the caster is making glaring mistakes, but the fact that the caster is just
I think it's a bit
target?
of both. Yeah, I think it's very easy to kind of get frustrated at, you know, especially a game like this, and especially if you're a color caster, you need to know what you're talking about because the easiest bit of criticism that you can get is this person doesn't know what they're talking about, or they're biased, or just for whatever reason, right? I think like people are still trying to work out how to cast a tactical shooter like this, especially if you've never had that experience in the past. There's hours and hours of VOD that you can watch of how, you know, Sadakist or Henry G did it, for example, and see what they do and sort of compare it. You couldn't even just take the whole damn style if you really want, because they're not around at the moment. Well, Sadakist might be, but generally speaking, I do think that from my perspective as well, if you're not a sort of well-known person, you don't either get recognition when you deserve it, but you get tons more negative feedback if you make a mistake compared to somebody that, you know, like DDK Sean Garris. If they said the same thing as somebody else, they wouldn't get that much criticism. But if you're somebody that nobody recognizes, they're going to put you on blast. That's how I personally feel on it.
Yeah, so I think I understand that perspective. I think maybe because I am I mean, slightly more established, I guess, than some of the names in Valorant. I definitely have witnessed color commentary from people in Valorant that, frankly, is not what I would consider up to standard. I just
100%,
think that's
yeah.
as simple as that. I definitely think that there are. I think that you know, for example, someone like Avril is extremely good when it comes to his analysis. But at the end of the day, like I have heard examples in color casting of color commentators making assumptions that are frankly unfounded, especially when it comes to like the psychology of a team or like what the underlying factors in a team's struggles are. I think that it is extremely easy to avoid issues like this by adopting a benefit of the doubt approach, even as a color commentator. You know, I'd much like if I see something that's weird, I would much rather sort of go, hey, like Van Sealy, what are the reasons, for example, what are the reasons why this might be happening? I think that some color commentators fall in the trap of trying to be a little bit too decisive in their delivery, which gives the
You double down,
impression
yeah.
that they are making these assumptions very solidly. And I think that's what rubs players up the wrong way. I think that there are some color casters that are in such a hurry to seem like an authority on the game, to seem smart, that they actually reach into territory that they shouldn't be. They reach into territory where they couldn't possibly know the answer or what's actually going on. And they will make an assumption because they need to fill that void, because they feel the need to be validated. They feel the need to be the smartest guy in the room. I see it happen with multiple color commentators. And I really think that, you know, that's something that I want to see brushed up on. Now, here's what I think. Color commentators that don't have a professional background have it the hardest, because frankly, there's an assumption that someone with a, you know, pro playing experience knows what they're talking about off the bat. I feel like there's a lot of color commentators that are just not play-by-play casters, not necessarily, you know, ex-pros, that feel like they have to go the extra mile to demonstrate their acumen, right? But look at someone like Monte Cristo as a good example. One of the best color casters that we've seen. No pro playing experience, plays Vi jungle at like silver level in League of Legends. He was like a silver Reinhardt in Overwatch. But he watches a lot of tape. You know what I mean? He makes sure that if he makes any assumption or makes any assertion that would otherwise require some sort of evidence, it's there. It's already there. He never reaches into that territory without actually providing some substantive explanation as to why. So yeah, I would just sort of say to color casters coming up in Valorant, it's okay. Like you don't have to seem smart. Okay, your play-by-play commentator should be able to set you up for those home runs anyway. And if they don't, then that's something you need to work on. Your job is actually not to make yourself seem smart. It's to have your play-by-play guy set you up and give you these home runs, right? So,
That's why I color for Uber. I'm not smart.
well, I mean, look. I mean, to be fair,
I'm not a
to
pro.
be fair,
anyway, so.
I mean, here you go. There was a whole furor in Counter-Strike, the Yodele noobs thing. That was Van Sealy's fault.
Yep.
Van Sealy was the one that said that. Now, people thought it was Dust, and Dust got a bunch of shit for it, but Van Sealy pissed off some French players by sort of calling them noobs, but it was actually it was a reference. It was a meme joke, but Van Sealy, that blew up into a whole thing.
Exactly. So it's some things that was taken out of proportion. To get back on that, it was just I pulled it out at the wrong time. You know, if I could put it that way. It was supposed to be a meme comment on a good play that Smith was going to do, but unfortunately, I didn't see any good plays from Smith in that series, so I had to pull it out at some time. So it backfired. I learned from that, and at the same time, that's why when I'm looking at color commentary and doing Valorant at the same time too, I do exactly what Monte Crystal does. Is I continue to watch as many VODs as I can about that team. I don't prep as much for EU because my sole focus is on NA right now because of everything that's happening and going on, and I'm region locked to NA casting, right? So that's why
you complain about region lock. I swear to God. I swear to Christ.
Woe is
me. I can't do Europe, like
richer, bro. Real quickly,
swear to God. I think the main thing though is just like, yeah, up and coming people make more mistakes. It's a natural given thing, but I do think that they stand out more than if somebody more established said the wrong thing or had a crutch word, for example. And I do think to an extent, when you put this kind of thing out on Twitter, you are kind of going, you know, agree with me almost. Like, I want to highlight this and I want to make sure that I'm in the right. That's kind of how I feel when somebody tweets out like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, what good is it going to do? Like, yeah, there's casters, there's analysts, there's stuff that I don't necessarily like. But that's subjective to an extent, and they're putting themselves out there. And the good thing about a lot of the NA casters is they're now getting regular work that we're now seeing a huge improvement. And I think that, using Simo, for example, he does like streams helping out his own VODs, other people's VODs. But if Simo and Bala have a good cast, there's nobody there to really say, good job, guys, you did really well, right? DDK, Sean Garris finish your cast, everybody's like, these guys are great because they're so good. But so that's kind of how I feel, that when these up-and-coming casters do really well, they don't get as much credit as they maybe deserve from some people, but when they screw up, oh man, it all comes tumbling down on them.
But Van Silly, me and you had a great cast the other day, and what did I say to you after it? I said, if we don't hear anything about this, that's good.
Yep.
No news is good news, because it's much easier to go and give negative feedback about something. Like I said to him, like, if we don't hear anything about this in terms of like Reddit or anything like that, we should be happy because we haven't pissed anyone off, but also, like no one's gonna, I don't want people to come to me and fucking congratulate me for doing my job. Like I don't need to be told that I'm a very solid play-by-play commentator. It's nice if people feel like they want to go to that extent, but in general, if I don't hear anything about it, I'm like, good. I have delivered a product that is expected of me. As time goes on, but less and less people, get on their knees and praise you for being better, because their expectation of what you provide also gets better and better, right? So eventually, they expect great things from you, and you might not always exceed that. Like there is a limit to where you can exceed your greatest performances. Maybe you can do it in moments, right? But yeah, you won't fucking hear necessarily any positive feedback, because you might be just here, just below your peak, but still incredibly good, but not exceeding that. I mean shit, neither of those motherfuckers have asked me for feedback. If they want feedback, their peers can give it to them, right? Like no caster should be in a position where they should expect feedback from Reddit. Just get over yourselves. Very quickly, Bala points out it's something that he says he feels like there's something teach pretty frequently for color commentators not to sound uncertain. There's a fine line, my guy. I don't want color commentators to sound like they have all the information. I think that you, as an honest, if you're going to be academically honest or act with some sort of academic integrity, you have to admit that you can't have all the answers as a color commentator. You can suggest reasons as to why something may have happened, but if you don't have the information, don't act like you do. Okay, just don't do it. You need to give the benefit of the doubt, and you need to suggest possibilities. You need to allow people to come to their own conclusions on something. It's not you don't control the narrative, right? The narrative should come from the game and from an honest reading of what happens, where you accept that you may be incorrect and you simply suggest possibilities as to something. Unless you were on that team 6 weeks ago and you were a coach and you knew exactly what their problems are, it shouldn't be happening. I don't know who taught that. I don't know who taught that lesson. Whoever taught that should not be teaching that. All right, it's as simple as that. All right. Very quickly. Big shout out to DDK, because he basically wrote the Rosetta Stone on esports the other day. I think as a follow-on from this discussion, right? I don't know if this was prompted by Shinobi saying that this was like it was some bad color commentary, but DDK does a good job at putting into words basically the mindset that occurs with attack FPS. Now, for someone like me, who doesn't actually, who never played TAC FPS at a high level, but I just watched a lot of VODs. In Counter-Strike, I watched hours and hours. Like, I learned how to cast TAC shooters from Pansy, for example. We cast together for a while in CS, and a lot of this stuff I took for granted, but it was nice to see it all sort of written out. Maybe some people may need the cliff notes for it, because the way that the essay is edited is in a very academic sense, which is kind of awesome, because that just doesn't really exist. I know there are a ton of people that just fucking retweet it without reading, being like, everyone should look at this and read this. Okay. I'm sure some people did read it. And I think it's very valuable to do so. A couple pictures wouldn't hurt. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know if you guys read it, but it provides a very good framework for how to perceive the flow of a attack shooter game. And it also provides a bit of discussion about why kills aren't the be all and end all, and why it's a constant flux and flow of information and acting on decisions that you sort of make.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a good place to sort of understand some of the stuff, even if you're not a caster, to just sort of see why people do certain things. And I feel like, generally speaking, a video with all of that kind of stuff wouldn't hurt either, because the thing that sort of helps that is examples, right? And he uses it, using a recon dart on the early round, throwing it down B long on bind, seeing 3 people. That information causes you to make a decision based on what you want to do to be proactive, where you want to position literal chess pieces at that point, right? And maybe the other team want you to think that they're going there, but in fact they're going to jump through the teleporter, teleport over to A. You've got to like have all of these points multifaceted over each other, all of these scenarios to go in your head. And I think that's what just makes you a solid caster, is this is how it's lining up to be, not necessarily predicting what happens, because if you get it wrong, you look an idiot and people will take the piss out of you for being wrong, and they will just maybe assume that you don't necessarily have the understanding of the game when you said that A was going to happen and B did instead. But generally, you know, the good advice that Sideshow's given me is just, you know, you are there to sort of set up what could potentially happen, the stuff that's on the board for teams to use. And I think that sort of reading through this, understanding the concepts of what teams are trying to do is a necessity, but hopefully more's going to come in the future. And he said that you might do more on actually how to cast a game too, which again would be super cool to hear.